No relationship is going to be exactly what you want, right? That's not even a relationship. Like maybe you're looking for someone, and maybe you're looking for someone who wants the same things you want, which is possible. But I think there's needs to be some kind of acknowledgement if you're lonely about like what's the other person's perspective, like what do they want from a relationship, and is it impossible for you to engage with someone who doesn't want what you want, or can you engage with them anyway and maybe give them something that they want, because maybe if they do that, they'll give you what you want, right? There's like an exchange in relationships, which I'm not really getting much of. And the interesting thing is that I think that this person does do this. So it's kind of interesting because if you really talk about this example, like good friends with a coworker, at first we got along well, they make impulsive decisions, I want to help them. So we see those elements there of like meeting people where they're at, supporting them in their own challenges, all these kinds of things. But then I think this conditioning and all this other crap gets in the way. So the right stuff is there, right? But there's this weird kind of conditioning where he's been taught to be judgmental, or she's been taught to be judgmental. And then like they're maybe afraid of being rejected, and they maybe like see negative parts of themselves in that other person, which causes them to push people away, right? And then we kind of get to the last thing, which is we try to fix our internal problems by surrounding ourselves with the opposite. So this is kind of related to, this point here. But if I am impulsive and, like not disciplined and vulnerable to alcoholism, then I think I can fix that by surrounding myself with like PhD students, right? Who are like into philosophy. And there's some truth to this. So you want to be careful, like for example, if you're trying to get sober, right? They're like very powerful social capital and community effects. You don't want to hang out with a bunch of people who are actively using if you're trying to get sober. There's a lot of like good reasonableness here. But at the same time, be a little bit careful, because a lot of these problems you're going to take with you, right? Surrounding yourself with people who are like, the opposite of what you are can absolutely have a good influence on you, but it is not going to fix the problem. Ultimately, if you're impulsive and like prone to alcohol, those are things that need to be internally fixed, but internally fixed in a supportive environment. And that's where the environment kind of comes in, right? That's why you have sober houses. Because it's easier to do the internal work when you're externally supported. So I'd absolutely recommend that this person, finds different company. Like, that's totally fine. Like, if you want to go hang out with PhD students at a local university, go for it. But be careful about, this business over here. Because what you may find is that, your mind may be looking for a way to dismiss them. That's what you have to be super careful about. Because you may be finding some of the stuff that you actually want, but your mind may be dismissing it because deep down it's afraid of like being the stupidest kid in the room, right? And this is where I would start to ask questions like, when your mom, was there anyone that your mom did want you to be friends with? And how did you feel like hanging around them? What was it like being around people who were smarter than you, better than you, faster than you, better looking than you?
How do we top that?
Because there's a lot of stuff here that I think is conditioning. There's a lot of stuff here that I think could be like, displacing onto other people. But the truth of the matter is that people who are, feel like they're smarter than everyone else are incredibly lonely. And like, I know that the internet loves to hate on people who think they're smarter than everyone else, but the truth is like, they're just as deserving of our compassion as anyone else, right? We're just being judgmental. And there's just one thing that we find particularly annoying, right? It's like the I'm very smart people and the Karens. And so like, it's just really hard to have compassion for some of these people. And at the same time, I think that this person has done an awesome job, because we start here and everyone's like, screw this person. And then as we get down to the bottom, it's like, yeah, I mean no disrespect by the title. I don't know how to better phrase my issue. They're just being authentic, right? I want to stay with friends, but I'm just, am I compromising my life? It's really hard for me to meet people who I feel are productive and good influences. but I don't know if I'm being a cocky asshole. Like, this is an incredibly, like, humble, authentic representation of this person's problem. This person is incredibly lonely. And so what do you do if you're in this situation where you genuinely feel like you cannot meet people who, like, are giving you what you want, cannot challenge you, you don't have mutual respect in a relationship, right? And this, by the way, so, like, and we'll get to that in a second. So if you're in this place, I'd start with sort of looking at your conditioning. Where were you taught to think like this? Because chances are there's a lot of judgment in your past. Either, in this case, you were, like, your mom literally told you, don't hang out with that person is stupid and is going to hold you back. Or you were on the receiving end of the judgment, right? Or your mom called you stupid. And so you, like, learned to call other people stupid. We see this from this person's dad, too, where the dad doesn't know how to form relationships. So this person literally was not taught how to form relationships. Like, that's a skill that most of us just learn because our parents, like, have relationships. And so when we're 3 years old and we don't understand what's going on, but my dad has an argument with his best friend and they start yelling at each other and they just ignore me because they're caught up in it, but I'm still watching it, right? It's still getting, like, laid down in my brain in some way, shape, or form. So this person just was conditioned to think this way. Secondly, they're incredibly lonely, right? They're not looking for knowledge, they're looking for discussion. They want to be challenged. They want to challenge other people. What they're looking for is respect. But respect is mutual. And you can't have mutual respect unless you respect the other person. And what I'm hearing is that when there's judgment, there's not a whole lot of respect. So you're never going to have mutual respect. You're never going to have a relationship. You have to start by respecting the other person. Right? Like, if you want a friend, if you're lonely, you need mutual respect to have friendships, but as long as you're not respecting the other person, then, like, how's that ever going to happen? Another thing to be careful about is that sometimes we hate in others that which we cannot fix in ourselves. And we understandably want to avoid those kinds of people because they're bad influences. And so we try to surround ourselves with the right people, the opposite. But we can try to surround ourselves with whoever we want to, and those people can absolutely be good influences. But the problems I'm going to carry with me, like, you know, they're going to come with you to some degree. So you've got to work on that. And the last thing to kind of think a little bit about is, like, what does the other person want in the relationship? Why don't you ask them? Why does a relationship all have to all be about your needs? As you start to go through some of these things, as you start to realize your conditioning, as you start to recognize what some of your internal fears may be, maybe you're rejecting them before they get a chance to reject you, right? That could be going on. What actually happens when you meet someone who challenges you? How do you actually respond to that person? Because you may say, well, a couple things. Maybe you just steer clear of them subconsciously. Or maybe you do all kinds of mental gymnastics to be judgmental towards them, to knock them down a peg when they're better at philosophical discussions than you are. Right? It's very possible. And at the end of the day, I don't think that you have to be lonely if you're in this situation. You really don't. It's going to take some work. It's going to be hard work. Because this training does not happen overnight, right? Like, you don't get to this situation just randomly.
Of the night.
You get to this situation when you've got two parents
lighting a cigarette
who've been really rough in
That
terms of
means
teaching you
nobody
how
blew
to,
up
like,
the
form
petrol
relationships.
station.
When you like make friends in this, like, when you're 7 and your mom is like, that person isn't smart enough for you, like, that sinks in deep. You've been programmed. So it's hard to undo that. And how do you start? It starts with mutual respect. It starts by thinking a little bit about other people's needs, exploring yourself. And then hopefully you can find what you're looking for. And by all means, like, explore outside of your current domain, because maybe you just need to go to different places, right? So there's some very practical stuff too. Right? Questions? Yeah, gifted kids with parents like that, absolutely. Someone's asking, how do you deal with conditioning in general beyond recognizing it? So recognizing it is actually like the lion's share of it. So if you trust the yogis from, like, ancient India, they will say recognizing it is sufficient. So the problem with conditioning is that it's like an invisible monster, right? You need detection. You need, like, a sentry ward or whatever the law equivalent is. Like, you need to be able to detect your enemy to do anything. So the brain is pretty good. The mind is pretty good at, like, making the right choice. The biggest problem is, like, a problem of misdiagnosis. So once you figure out what the problem is, and you guys may have seen this on stream. We haven't done interviews a whole lot recently, but you'll kind of see the cathartic moment where someone realizes, and then the behavior follows suit. Right? There's even good evidence that shows that there's this thing called the insight trial, which was super fascinating, which looked at the correlation between insight and behavior. So if you want to see behavioral changes, insight has to come first. And then the behavioral changes seem to almost naturally follow. So you can definitely do things to support the behavioral changes. You can operationalize, you can find the right kind of community, you can do different kinds of exercises, but actually insight is the most important thing. Once you recognize that that is conditioning, then you can intervene with it in the moment. So if I go to, let's say, like a philosophy club, and I'm aware, if I'm on the lookout for these things, and someone shows up there, or even before I go, it's like the day for philosophy club is there, I'm about to get in my car, and then suddenly my mind is like, oh, why don't we just play games? Like, we can go next week. Wait, I thought you were lonely. I thought you wanted deep discussions. Like, why are you suddenly thinking about playing games? Like, where's that thought coming from? Right? And as you begin to realize, like, oh, like, and then you ask yourself the question, how do I feel about going? Like, pick up your car keys, walk out to your car, and then, like, notice that your heart rate is, like, through the roof. You're tachycardic, and you're sweating, and you're just, like, trying to get into a car. What's wrong here? And then you realize, like, something is up. Right? So awareness of conditioning is critical. And then once you become aware of it, then you can sort of realize, like, oh, this is me being afraid that, like, I'm going to be the stupid one in the room. And so am I willing to let that fear take control of me? It's okay if you are. You can say yes. Like, that fear is too much right now. So be it. Or I'm going to set that fear aside and I'm going to try to go. Right? And then you start to condition yourself in other ways. So neurons that fire repeatedly get well grooved, right? So if we want to understand how conditioning works, it's kind of like a game trail in the wilderness. So it starts off with a field of grass that is all the same. And then a mouse runs through the field and tramples a little bit of grass. And then what happens is a rabbit approaches the field and sees, oh, there's one area where the grass is a little bit trampled. So the rabbit runs across the field. Rabbit's bigger than a mouse, so it tramples a little bit more grass. And then there's something like a small deer that walks across it because it sees an area that's trampled. And then like a bigger deer crosses it, and then another rabbit, and then another mouse, and then suddenly you've got a game trail. That's the way your neurons work. So when you're told by your mom over and over and over again that these people are not good enough for you, you will start to internalize that. That is a well-grooved set of neurons. Neurons that fire together, wire together, right? So when you start to think in a particular way, all those neurons will get connected, and then all you have to do is trigger one neuron, and it'll trigger everything down the path. So how do you start to do that? It's the same way you make a new game trail. So in a given moment in your life, there's going to be an easy path, which you've walked 1,000 times before. Or there's a hard path. You have to walk through the grass, and that's going to require more energy. It's going to be more difficult. You recognize that, right? That's like facing that fear in the moment that you're going to go to the philosophy club meeting. And so actually going to the meeting is creating a new game trail. We're not even at a game trail. We're walking through the tall grass, and it requires way more effort than going down the game trail. The interesting thing, though, is the second time you go to the philosophy club meeting, it's going to be easier because now there's a little bit of trampled grass. And then you do that a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time, and then suddenly by the end of it, and I've seen this a ton in people who are alcoholics, for example,